Hi students, welcome to my YouTube channel. Last time I finished explaining the first chapter of your text Nicobobinus. Now I will start the second chapter. Can you remember where I left? Remember the lines. Are you all right? Called Rosie, but she didn't hear any reply except for the man who growled, just you one, wait, both of you. So when Rosie um, could hear some noise, perhaps when Nicobobinus landed on the pile of leaves. Pile means heap of leaves, means some perhaps some dry leaves are put together on the ground, and that has made a pile or heap, and there Nicobobinus landed thereupon. So perhaps Rosie could hear the sound of his landing, and she smelled something wrong. So she yelled that, "Are you all right?" She wanted to know the whereabouts of Nicobobinus, but she didn't hear any reply. But Nicobobinus couldn't reply her except for the man who growled. But the man replied her, "Just you wait, both of you." Here, both of you means Nicobobinus and his friend Rosie. Okay? "Oh dear," said Rosie, "sounds like trouble." When Rosie hears the voice of another man, she smells that there will be some trouble that Nicobobinus is going to face. And she was right. Now the writer says, yes, she was right. Nicobobinus is now going to face a real trouble. Now let's begin chapter 2. Nicobobinus ran as fast as he could across the lawn, down the path, round a hedge, and into a little shade, and bolted the door. So Nicobobinus started running to keep himself safe from the man, and he ran as fast as he could across the lawn. And thus he crossed the lawn, down the path, then he went down the path, round a hedge, and into then he moved round a hedge, a ground, and into a little shade. Then he came into a little shade that might be some room that had a door, and he bolted the door. So he locked the door. There was no lock, there was a bolt that could lock the door from inside. So he bolted the door. "Open up," cried the man, and the hinges creaked and the door shook. When the man said open up, and then he hits the door, the hinges means the joints of the door and the wall, so that creaked, that made a sound, and the door shook, and the door shook means the door moved as he banged it with his fists. He banged it with his fists. He hit it with his fist um, as powerfully as possible. Okay. Mm, that door's not going to last long, thought Nicobobinus to himself. Now Nicobobinus thought, and he murmured to himself that the door's not going to last long, because the door was not quite strong, and the man could shake the door easily and break the door. So he thought that there will be trouble, and he dragged a large old stone roller up against it. Now he saw a stone roller near, and he took it, and he put it against the door. And do you know what is a stone roller? It's a cylindrical it's a cylindrical shaped big stone that is used to flatten the grasses of the lawn. That is called stone roller. So it will be quite heavy, and he put it against the door so that the man couldn't open the door easily. Open this door at once. Do you hear? The man was shouting. So the man shouted to Nicobobinus to open the door, but Nicobobinus didn't hear anything at all. He was too amazed by what he had found. But he found something there, and he was very surprised, very amazed to see that something. Now we have to read, we have to discover eventually what was that something. What was that something? Okay, now you will have to come out eventually, the man was saying, and the longer you leave it, the worse it will be for you. The man then said that the Nicobobinus had to come out because he can't stay there lifelong, so he had to come out. He must be hungry at one time or other, and he would come out then. And the longer you leave it, the worse it will be for you. And he threatens Nicobobinus, if you leave lately, then it will be more harmful for you, more dangerous for you, more danger will be waiting for you. But he could have saved his breath. But Nicobobinus didn't pay heed to it. Nicobobinus was on his knees examining what he had revealed when he moved the roller. Now Nicobobinus found that something when he moved the stone roller, and he was examining, he was observing that something, and he sat on his knees to examine. He brushed off the dust. He cleared the dust and undid the catch and then lifted it up. Then what he did, he lifted that thing up that he found. Right, I am going to break this door down. He found a door. Said the man. The man then again warned Nicobobinus that he was now going to break the door. And then, because he knew he would have to repair the door himself, he added, "Do you hear? The door was the room was the man was the owner of the room, so the door also belonged to the man, and if he breaks the door, he had to repair the door." So he threatened Nicobobinus to uh, open the door because it would be his loss if he breaks his own door. Okay, so he continuously warns Nicobobinus and threatens him, but doesn't break the door. But Nicobobinus did not hear. Nicobobinus had disappeared through the trap door. Now, what he discovered? He discovered a trap door that went underground. So he disappeared through the trap door he had discovered and was running down stone steps that were slippery with slime and that smelled of graveyards, and that went down and down deeper into the ground until it became pitch black. So he discovered a trap door that went underground, and he ran down through the stone steps that started from that trapdoor and went underground, and the steps were very slippery with slime. They were very slippery to walk, and that smelled of graveyards. The smell of it was like graveyard because it was not opened for years, so it smelled like that. And that went down and down deeper into the ground until it became pitch black. He went down and down, deeper and deeper, and it was pitch black. There was no light there. Okay, now Rosie said Nicobobinus to himself, "This is all your fault." Now Nicobobinus was in utter danger. He was helpless. He was lost in pitch darkness, and he was blaming Rosie for that in his mind. That, "Rosie, you are responsible for this because you uh, instigated me to come with you to visit the land of dragons, but now see, I am at danger. My life is at stick. He heard his heart pounding and his steps echoing along the dank rock of the narrow passageway. Until all at once there was nothing, and before he realized he was falling in the blackness, he was. So he was feeling very afraid. He was very afraid. He was fearing something danger, and so his heart was beating fast. He could hear his heart pounding. So there was silence, so that he could hear his heartbeat and his steps echoing along the dank rock of the narrow passageway. There was a rock in the narrow passageway. The way was very narrow and the rock was dank, echoing, his steps echoing, and there was silence, and the passage was so narrow, like, so there was echo of his steps. Until all at once there was nothing, and before he realized he was falling in the blackness. Until at all at once there was nothing. He found nothing and he realized he was falling in the blackness. There was nothing but blackness, darkness, and etc. He was. To be continued after the paragraph. He was. So here a new word we found, that dank. Dank means damp, cold. It was damp, it was cold. Okay. So Nicobobinus was lost in darkness. Okay. Now we see what happened next. Several thoughts flashed through his mind at the same time. At the same time, he had thoughts of different kinds of thoughts, okay, in his mind. The first was something along the lines of brother, only a bit ruder. The first was something along the lines of brother. He thought of his brother. Then the second was a rather unkind thought about his best friend, who had instigated the whole expedition, and it involved her dangling over a snake pit, while numerous fierce dragons flew at her, chanting, "How could you do it to him? Poor Nicobobinus." So first thought was about his brother. The thought was not very pleasant, as you see, only a bit ruder, because perhaps he had no good relation with his brother. The second was about his best friend, that was Rosie, because Rosie instigated him to come to this expedition, and now he imagines her to be dangling over a snake pit with numerous fierce dragons flew at her, chanting, "How could you do it to him? Poor Nicobobinus." He thinks that the dragons are talking to Rosie, who is dangling over a snake pit, hanging over a snake pit. Snake pit means where the holes where the snakes live, and numerous dragons are blaming her. How could you do to your friend, your best friend, poor Nicobobinus? That was his second thought. How could you do it to him, poor Nicobobinus? The third thought was, suppose it's a well, a deep, unused well with slimy, slippery sides that you could never climb and icy water at the bottom. The third thought was of that place where he has been into, that it might be a well, a deep well, that's why its walls and the steps were so slippery and cold and damp, and when he gets further and gets into deeper, perhaps he could find icy cold water, and there was no way to escape from this well. So these were his three thoughts at that time. At this point, he discovered it was not a well. He made this discovery very suddenly and very painfully. But suddenly he discovered it was not a well. But the discovery was not very pleasant. It was very painful. "Oh," said Nicobobinus, and he lay there in pitch blackness, with not a single breath left in his body, for what seemed like the whole winter, but was probably a few seconds. "Oh," said Nicobobinus, and he lay there in pitch dark blackness. So as Nicobobinus was in danger, and he said, "Oh," and he lay there in the pitch darkness, with not a single breath left in his body, for what seemed like the whole winter, but was probably only a few seconds. So it was very cold there and pitch black. So he was lying there, and it was like he passed the whole winter within a few seconds. He came to himself, in fact, just as a stone hit him on the head. Now, the third part. He came to himself, in fact, just as a stone hit him on the head. Suddenly he felt a stone hit him on the head. "Oh," said Nicobobinus again, and then realized he could hear footsteps high above him. Now he could hear someone's footsteps. He realized that someone was coming after him. "Stop, sir," he called out, but the footsteps kept on coming. He cried out that, "Stop, sir." But the footsteps didn't stop. They continued to come down. Now, what happened? "Aha! I have got you now," cried the man, "and I shall beat every bone in your body until it is black and—" It was the footsteps of that man who was following him. He said, "Aha! Now I have got you." And he will beat him and break his bones. Nicobobinus supposed the man was going to say blue, "until it is black and blue." But in black and blue means he would probably break his bones. That is, he turned into black and blue. He says that. But in fact, the next word he uttered sounded more like something like this. I can't pronounce this. If you can pronounce, please tell me what it is written. But sounded like this. Okay. So it is, if you look at the word, you feel a kind of amusement in your heart. This is the comic element of this story. Now, it was not a word with which Nicobobinus was at all familiar, but he understood its meanings perfectly and moved smartly out of the way. So Nicobobinus never heard such a word, so he couldn't pronounce. But he understood its meaning perfectly and moved smartly out of the way. Meaning? What could be its meaning? Perhaps the man was in trouble. Perhaps the man fell down and he was hit by something, so he uttered such peculiar word. Or there was some danger waiting for them. Crash! "Are you all right?" he asked. There was crash. That means the man fell down. So he asked the man, Nicobobinus, "Are you all right?" There was silence. Nicobobinus felt his way back into the pitch dark until his hand touched the man's leather jerkin. Nicobobinus now walked back in his way until he touched the man's leather jerkin. Then he found the man. He touched his leather jerkin. The man was lying still as death. The man was lying still as he was no more, but he was breathing. But Nicobobinus felt that the man was breathing. I must get help, said Nicobobinus to himself, and he began groping around in the blackness to find another way out. Now the man was lying like this, senseless, and Nicobobinus was all alone in that pitch darkness, and he was now hankering after some help, and so he did not give in, but he started groping around in the blackness to find another way out. Groping around means roaming around, মানে ঘুরে বেড়ানো. When he found it, however, his heart sank. He found something. The only exit appeared to be a narrow gap. He found an exit. It was a narrow gap by the floor, no more than a foot high. It was very narrow, no more than a foot high, because it could be a foot, but not more than that, its height. I can squirm through that in the pitch dark. Squirm means squeeze his body and wriggle it, turn it left and right, and go out of the exit. Go out through the exit, he said to himself, but at that very moment he heard Rosie's cheerful voice saying, "You can do it." He heard Rosie's voice that you can do it. So it was, do you think it was Rosie there? No, it was in his mind. Rosie was his best friend and she always believed in him. Believed that Nicobobinus had the capability to do anything. So it always lifted his confidence up. So he thought of Rosie's voice, encouraging him that he could do that. Okay? Nicobobinus spun round, and there, to his immense surprise, was nothing. Nicobobinus went there, but there was nothing. He thought that Rosie was there, but there was nothing. No Rosie, no anybody. But I don't know if it leads anywhere, he said to the voice in his head. He said to the voice means the voice of Rosie was in his head. So he replied that, but I don't know if it leads anywhere. Means the exit way he found could lead to nowhere. So he was quite doubtful about it. And it's such a tight squeeze, I might get stuck. So it was so narrow that he could get stuck at any point of the time. He didn't hear Rosie's voice again, but he knew what it would have said, and that was how he found himself wriggling down a narrow passage of stone in the pitch black. This is very important para here, where at every moment Rosie is not present there, but he is continuously encouraged by his imaginary voice of Rosie. Because Rosie was always the source of his confidence. She was always there in his mind to encourage him. That is the true essence of the best friendship. Okay? Now, next. He squirmed and he wriggled there in the black for a long, long time, and the tunnel got narrower until he could hardly inch along it. So as he squirmed and wriggled and got into the tunnel, and the tunnel was gradually getting narrower. I am going back, he said to himself, but he didn't. Sometimes he thought that he should give in and go back, but he didn't. He just kept wriggling and squirming until suddenly he found he could stand up. Suddenly he found a
big passage he was into, and he could stand up. He took a pace forward and immediately fell over stone steps leading up. Then he took a pace forward. He took a step forward and immediately he fell over stone steps leading up. There were stone steps leading up and he stumbled at them. Oh, he said, although what he really meant was thank goodness. He said, oh, because he stumbled. But there was a sense of gratitude in his mind. He thanked goodness of the God in his heart. He began to climb, and he was still climbing some minutes later. He continued climbing up. It must be a tower, he thought, or the grandest house in Venice. It was a long stair, so he continued to climb up. So he thought that it must be a tower or the grandest house in Venice. But at that very moment, he saw a crack of light. Now there was a ray of hope. He saw a crack of light. He stretched out his hand and found himself touching a catch that clicked softly in dark. He stretched his hand, moved his hand, and touched something in the dark, and it felt very soft. A panel suddenly slid open, and Nicobobinus stepped through into the most amazing room he had ever seen. So he found himself touching a catch, and he clicked softly in the dark. Something he could saw. The panel suddenly slid open. Then the roads opened, and Nicobobinus found what? An amazing room that he had ever seen. So he had entered into some another world with another adventure in it. So this was the second chapter and the last chapter of your text. There was much adventure in this chapter, which only was faced by Nicobobinus, and Rosie was left on the other side of the wall. She knew nothing of it. But throughout his journey, Rosie's voice was with him. Rosie's good wishes, Rosie's beliefs in him, faith in him was always with him to overcome all hard situations. And that was enough to let him not to give in, but find a way out the pitch darkness. Okay? So I end here. If you have any doubt, you can knock at my door at any point of time. So now read the passage, and if there is any problem, contact me. Thank you.